Alright guys, so this week we're going to start out with Chapter 4, and next week we're going to finish Chapter 4. And the first part of Chapter 4 is discussing the biogeochemical cycles. Now I'm just going to talk about a couple of the cycles, some important things to make note of. So here we have the carbon cycle, and one of the things that I like to point out is how carbon cycles through the earth and the atmosphere, and that human combustion is only one facet of a multifaceted cycle. Okay, so you can read in your book about where carbon, how it's emitted and how it's sequestered. Okay, those are called sources and sinks of carbon. And you can see that it cycles throughout the environment under a number of different scenarios. So for your lab reports, you're going to be talking about nitrate and phosphate, and these are some important nutrients that find themselves in our soils. Nitrate is very important because it is the only form in which we can actually use nitrogen in our bodies. You can't breathe it from the air. It's an inert gas. It does you no good. But when it is in the form of nitrate in the soil, okay, then you can use it. The process by which nitrogen gets bonded to oxygen is in the process of nitrification. Nitrifying bacteria carry out the process. Now you can see that in every step of the nitrogen cycle, you have bacteria. Bacteria are the thing carrying out nearly every single step of the nitrogen process. You can see it's bacteria everywhere. So bacteria does the job. It takes nitrogen from the atmosphere and fixes it into the form of ammonia. Then ammonia becomes nitrified and it transitions it from and bonded to hydrogens, nitrogens bonded to hydrogens, to nitrogens bonded to oxygens. And this is the most important step in the nitrogen cycle because this is the step in which plants and animals can now use that nitrate nitrogen. Assimilation, the process by which the roots of plants absorb nutrients from the soil and assimilate them into their plant bodies, is the only step in the nitrogen cycle that does not require bacteria. Now that nitrate is in plants and available to animals for consumption. When you look at the phosphate cycle, it's not a gas, it's a mineral. And phosphate starts in phosphate-bearing rocks. Okay, it's deposited through geologic processes, and as mountains are uplifted and their rocks exposed to the elements, the weathering process takes place. Weathering essentially releases the phosphorus that's been stored in minerals to the atmosphere and the surface of the earth, and then erosion carries that phosphate down into our streams, our rivers, our lakes, our ponds, and our soils. And that is the natural process of getting phosphorus into our waters and our soils. So there is naturally a minute amount of nitrate and phosphate in your water and in your soil through these natural processes. However, mining phosphate for the purpose of fertilizer increases the amount of phosphate in our soils and our waters, and you get a process known as internal cycling, especially within agricultural properties, where the cows and the livestock are eating from soils that are enriched in fertilizer, and then they are excreting their waste, which has become enriched in nitrates and phosphates, and then that waste is mixed into a manure and spread back over the fields to refertilize the fields. Then it rains, those nutrients are washed away from the field into the ponds and into the soils on the farmlands, and then the cows eat further enriched grasses on these agricultural properties, and they excrete further enriched waste, and then that waste is mixed into manure, and the process continues. And so that's internal cycling that can lead to a condition called eutrophication, and eutrophication is essentially a big fancy word for polluted.